Throughout this year, there's been a total of at least 7 student loan debt relief programs that I have counted that will help assist millions of federal student loan borrowers get debt relief from their student loans. And that's how I was able to turn my federal student loan account from this to this. But more importantly, in this video, I'm going to be going over 13 mistakes that I often see federal student loan borrowers make, specifically when trying to apply for public service student loan forgiveness. So this week, I'll be sharing with you what all my forms look like so that you can see how I completed them, how long it took to receive notice from the Department of Education regarding my student loan forgiveness status, and what you can do to achieve the same outcome. So mistake number 1 is that you're confused. You're like, wait, what, 7 programs? Or you've heard so many different things that you don't even know where to look. And so you've mistakenly wasted a lot of time. You're confused about what the public service student loan forgiveness waiver even is and how that's different from the $10,000 waiver that was announced back in August. So let's clear all that up. The student loan debt relief plan consists of 7 debt relief initiatives. The first one is the final extension of the student loan payment pause. That's until December 31st, 2022, and payments are expected to resume January 2023. The second one is a targeted student loan debt relief offered to low and middle income families from October of 2022 through December 31st, 2023. Here's where that $10,000 number for the student loan waiver came from.
So what will Joe Biden do? First, he wants to bring back a policy sought by congressional Democrats early in the pandemic.
The legislation passed by the Democratic House calls for immediate $10,000 forgiveness of student loans. It should be done immediately.
So that was a clip from the Wall Street Journal, helping to explain that there was already provision written within the HEROES Act to eliminate $10,000 in federal student loan debt. If you're interested in reading the actual act, I'll provide a link to this week's blog that will house all of the resources cited in this week's video in the description box below. The issue that the Biden administration is currently having at the moment is that its opponents of the targeted student loan debt relief see this program as an executive overreach. Now, as a result of this, the administration may just decide to forgo automatic debt relief for those on income-based repayment plans and instead just require everyone, regardless of what repayment plan they're on, to complete an application to manually opt in to the targeted student loan debt relief benefit if they want it. The Biden-Harris administration has already sent out an email communication to all borrowers who automatically qualify for federal student loan debt relief. So opting in may not be necessary. However, if you're a borrower who received this email and you do not want your student loan debt to be automatically forgiven, you can opt out of receiving this benefit by, first, determining who your student loan servicer is, and then contacting your student loan servicer to inform them that you do not want the targeted student loan debt relief benefit. You must do so by November 14th. The third debt relief initiative under the student loan debt relief plan is making the student loan system more manageable for current and future borrowers. The Biden-Harris administration proposed a rule to create a new income-driven repayment plan that will substantially reduce future monthly payments for lower and middle income borrowers. Here's a clip from the Wall Street Journal.
Biden's proposal changes this program in a way that draws less money from borrowers. The minimum payment rate for these plans would be reduced from 10% to 5% of a borrower's income after their first $25,000 earned. And Biden wants to make it so that forgiven debt won't be taxed as income.
The fifth initiative is the new IDR plan and new PSLF permanent regulations. The sixth is the Borrower Defense to Repayment Settlement. And then there's the temporary changes to the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program, also known as the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Limited Waiver, that is extended through October 31st, 2022. As mentioned earlier, I'll be providing a link to all of the articles and clips cited in this video so that you'll have all the information in one place in the description box below. I myself am a public educator and I have been paying my federal student loans under the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program. I will admit this program has had several issues. 6 months into Biden's administration, they began to answer the call by overhauling the program, retroactively reviewing all borrower applications currently enrolled under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program and reviewing all past payments made under these plans that were previously denied credit towards public service loan forgiveness. The limited PSLF waiver refers to the time-limited changes to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program rules that allow borrowers to receive credit for past periods of repayment that would otherwise not qualify for PSLF. This opportunity ends October 31st, 2022. So they will now be counting retroactive payments that were previously rejected. This addresses issues for borrowers that did not know that they weren't under the right type of repayment plan while they were repaying their student loans, but yet they were still working for a qualified employer, or they never consolidated them at all and continued to make payments through a private student loan lender. Now, they're only reviewing loans from 2007 on because that is when the program started. Now, the program has gotten a bad rap. However, to be fair, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program started in 2007, so the first cohort of college graduates that would have even been eligible to receive forgiveness would have been in 2017, because those graduates would have had to been gainfully employed in the public service sector for at least 10 years. The next mistake that I see federal student loan borrowers making when trying to apply for public student loan forgiveness is not knowing where to find the public service loan forgiveness form to begin with, or not knowing who to call to get access to their federal student loan information. This leaves them susceptible to scammers and hackers trying to charge them for things that they could do themselves, or leading them to spammy sites designed to gather their personal data without their permission. The Department of Education never really made this information easy to find in the first place, so here's where you can find the Public Student Loan Forgiveness form. There are two ways to find the application. The first way is to open up the PDF version of the Public Student Loan Forgiveness application and fill it out and then print it, and sign it and have your HR administrator sign it as well. So I probably wouldn't try to do this on your phone. Instead, get to a computer and print out the document. Yes, I'm talking to you because you're probably watching me on your mobile device right now. The second way is through using the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Help Tool. It suggests actions you can take to become eligible for public service student loan forgiveness and guides you through the form and submission process. To access the full features of the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Help Tool, you'll need to use your FSA ID, which is also the same ID used when completing the FAFSA application, the free application for federal student aid. If by chance you don't remember what that is, then visit this website so that you can retrieve your information safely. With either option you choose, you're going to need to make sure that you provide a wet signature for yourself and your employer to certify your employment. You cannot submit this application by using an electronic signature or just not having a signature at all. So who certifies or signs the document at your employer? Your employment can be certified by any official who has access to your employment or service records and is authorized by your employer to certify your employment or your service as an AmeriCorps or Peace Corps volunteer. This will often be someone in the Human Resources Department, though in some cases, your direct supervisor or another individual may be authorized to certify your employment. Check with your organization to see who is allowed to certify your PSLF form. Here's the website to find out if you work for a qualified employer. You can find out if your employer is listed as a qualifying employer by using the EIN tax ID number found either on your W-2 tax form or your tax paperwork. And then you can take that number and enter it into the employer search tool on the studentaid.gov website. Now, before you click off this video because you've heard me mention October 31st several times and you feel like it's too late for you, I want to make sure you know that you don't actually have to submit the PSLF form by October 31st, according to the studentaid.gov website. This is another mistake that federal student loan borrowers often make. It says, don't panic, you don't have to submit the PSLF form to MOHELA by October 31st if you have completed one of the following actions below. 1. Use the PSLF Help Tool by October 31st to generate a PSLF form that is eventually approved. 2. Use the PSLF Help Tool by October 31st and have a pending review of your employer's eligibility, and the Department of Education later determines your employer is eligible. And 3, by submitting a manual PSLF form not generated by the PSLF Help Tool with your employer's signature, and that must be dated on or before October 31st, 2022, and this form must later be approved. In the same vein, I'm noticing that a lot of people and federal student loan borrowers are under the impression that the public student loan forgiveness program is somehow going to go away or terminate after October 31st. Which leads us to the next mistake. You're under the impression that this video no longer applies to you because you feel like you won't meet the requirements to qualify for public student loan forgiveness by October 31st. Or that you happen to come across this video after the October 31st deadline. As of now, I'm happy to report that this program isn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. The Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program received bipartisan support and was passed through Congress under the Bush administration back in 2007 under the College Cost and Reduction Access Act. So calls to repeal this program currently seems unlikely. Instead, under the current administration, efforts have been made to actually improve the program. So here's what's changed. Prepayments and lump sum payments are now being counted as eligible public service loan forgiveness payments if all other program criteria are met. Prepayments will count for up to 12 months or the next time you're due to recertify your income-driven repayment plan, whichever one is sooner. Under the previous process, if you had a monthly payment that was $100 a month and your due date was the first of the month and you made a $1,200 payment on November 1st, and you were set to recertify your income-driven repayment plan on May 23rd, the $1,200 payment plan you made on November 1st would have been just counted as one qualifying payment towards public student loan forgiveness. Under the new plan, that $1,200 payment plan on November 1st counts as 7 eligible public service loan forgiveness payments. On May 23rd, you had to recertify your income-driven repayment plan for that $1,200 overpayment you made. However, making prepayments and lump sum payments will not advance your chances of getting your public service loan forgiveness forgiven any sooner. It still is based on a 10-year or 120 payment plan because you still would need to certify each year that you have been employed with a public service employer. So if you made that $1,200 overpayment and it counted as 7 payments, but you left your job after 5 months, you still would need to make sure that you certified your employment for the 5 months that you were employed for that overpayment. They've also updated the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Help tool that I mentioned earlier. The tool has made it much simpler for federal student loan borrowers to determine if they're even eligible for the program. You'll be directed to an employer database, and this database currently contains 1.5 million employers. To recap, here's what the Department of Education is changing to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. These changes will be in effect until October 31st, 2022. Now, it is important to mention these are the unchanged requirements that still are in effect, regardless of whether or not you're applying for the limited waiver or just the public service loan forgiveness in general. Feel free to pause the screen to read through all the details. And just as a reminder, if you're finding value in this video, please don't forget to give it a like. And if you enjoy this type of content, consider subscribing. And keep in mind, you can find all the details to this week's video posted on the blog, and a link to that will be provided in the description box below. The next mistake is that you're still unsure about who will be servicing your loans after December 31st or what student loans you even have. You can see what loans you have by logging into your account on the studentaid.gov website or going to the My Aid page and scrolling down to the loan breakdown section. To put it simply, if you completed a public service loan forgiveness application, your loans will or have already been transferred to MOHELA. That instruction is clearly stated on the public service loan forgiveness application. If you have federal student loans that you did not fill out a public service loan forgiveness application for, those loans have probably already been transferred to Aidvantage. And if you have private student loans in addition to federal loans, or you just have private loans, those loans will remain under your current private student loan servicer. Now, in addition to not knowing who your servicer is, there's also confusion around what type of repayment plans qualify for public service loan forgiveness. Now, this mistake is only applicable to you if you're applying for public student loan forgiveness after October 31st, because all the conditions to qualify will now be back in place. And making sure you're on a qualified repayment plan will probably be one of them. Qualifying repayment plans include income-driven repayment plans such as the revised pay-as-you-earn plan, the income-based repayment plan, the income contingent repayment plan. Even though the 10-year standard repayment plan is also a qualifying repayment plan for the PSLF, you cannot receive PSLF unless you enter into an income-driven repayment plan. These are plans that base your monthly payment on your income, which leads to mistake number 6. Similarly, many people don't know which types of loans qualify. So the next mistake is that you didn't know that you needed to consolidate your student loans. So let's go over quickly what types of loans qualify for public student loan forgiveness. Any direct loans under the William D. Ford Direct Loan Program. Loans that do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness but can qualify as long as they are consolidated are the Perkins loan and loans included under the FFELP program. So here's a full list of loans that would need to be consolidated first into one direct loan. Many of them shown here are what we just went over, but there's a few on here that are less commonly known. If you're still uncertain about what type of student loans you have, you can call the Federal Student Aid Information Center at this number, and the center's counselors can help you figure out what student loans you have. So I'm going to share my screen with you to show you what the full process looks like. So here's what we did. We checked to see what loans my mother still had with Navient, which is a private student loan servicer. We found that she still had an FFELP loan that she was paying on with Navient. Now you may have heard that there's been a rule reversal announced by the Department of Education that commercially held FFEL loans will no longer be eligible for loan forgiveness if they weren't consolidated into a direct loan by September 29th, 2022. According to Forbes magazine, this rule change only applies to the one-time student loan forgiveness initiative. As of the recording date of this video, this abrupt change does not appear to apply to the other temporary initiatives that we previously covered in the beginning of this video, such as the limited PSLF waiver and the IDR account adjustment that may result in student loan forgiveness for millions of borrowers. These initiatives also require FFEL borrowers to consolidate their loans into a direct loan to qualify. So in October of 2021, we decided that it was time to take that FFELP loan that my mother had on her Navient account and consolidate it to move it over to Fed Loan Servicing, which was the primary loan servicer that managed the public student loan forgiveness accounts. Now, as of the recording of this video, Fed Loan Servicing is closing and they have moved all of their public service loan forgiveness accounts over to MOHELA, which is now the designated loan servicer for all public service loan forgiveness accounts. On October 27, 2021, we completed the consolidation application for my mother to consolidate that FFELP loan into a direct loan. Now, what's great about the consolidation application is that it's only going to show you your loans that qualify for consolidation. So if you have other private loans, those won't be visible to you on this application. Now, it's important to mention that when you are filling out this application to consolidate your student loans for the purpose of public student loan forgiveness, you'll want to ensure that you are selecting the right loan servicer to take over your loans once the consolidation is completed. On December 27th, 2021, she received confirmation that the FFELP loan under Navient has now been officially converted into a direct loan, and her new loan servicer was Fed Loan Servicing. So the consolidation process from start to finish took about 60 business days. So now when we log back into Navient to check our account status on that FFELP loan, it now says that it has been consolidated and the payment has now been set to 0. When we log into her Fed Loan Servicing account, we can see that the loan has been moved over there and it now says direct student loan. So once this is done, the next step is to just upload your completed PSLF form to your new student aid portal. In our case, it was Fed Loan Servicing. In your case, if you're just now doing this, it's going to be MOHELA. Now, the actual public service loan forgiveness application is pretty self-explanatory. It's not at all as complicated as you may have heard on the news.
What is the main obstacle, would you say, in other people who would qualify for these forgiveness programs, for this program, not accessing it? And what's your advice to somebody who may be at the beginning of a mountain of paperwork?
It's literally just one document. There's only 2 pages of the form that need to be completed. The key information that I want to draw your attention to is selecting whether or not you want to qualify for forgiveness now, or if you just want them to qualify your years of service. The other area that you'll need to make sure is filled out is your employer ID number. You can find this in 2 places. You can find it either on your tax document or your W-2 statement. But because you have to get this signed by your employer anyways, you may just be able to ask them to fill out that part directly. So once the signatures have been made, make sure it's dated and then upload it to your student loan portal. Now, I'm not too familiar with the MOHELA website, but I know on the Fed Loan Servicing website, there was an actual portal where you can submit the PSLF form. If you have had multiple employers over the past 10 years of service, you'll need to make sure that you are submitting a public service loan forgiveness application for each employer, and you need to make sure that it is signed by each employer that you worked for in the past. So because my mother has only worked for the same employer within the last 10 years to certify for public service loan forgiveness, it was very easy for her to just go to her HR department and have her sign, and then she can submit it. I, on the other hand, have had multiple employers over a 10-year period. So here's an example of what my employment certification letters look like, certifying my history of prior employers over a 10-year period. Now, on December 28th, 2021, my mom submitted her PSLF application by uploading it to the Fed Loan Servicing Portal. On April 6th is when she received a letter stating she qualified for public service loan forgiveness, but only one payment qualified. This is because they first have to apply your application under the traditional public service loan forgiveness requirements first. Then your application gets passed to a different department to be reviewed under the limited waiver if received by October 31st, 2022. Then on May 24th, once the limited waiver review had taken place, she received an updated letter now telling her that she only had 2 qualifying payments left remaining in order to get full credit for 120 payments towards public service loan forgiveness. The date you put on your signature line of the public service loan forgiveness application is key. They base their calculation of when you qualify based off of that date. So then we resubmitted a second public service loan forgiveness application at or around the date of June 6th to certify her employment for the last 2 months that she needed to certify for public service loan forgiveness. And then on August 4th, she then received a third letter from the U.S. Department of Education updating her public service loan forgiveness count, and it then showed that she now was over her total qualifying payments. It wasn't until August 29th, 2022 that she received her final letter telling her that her loans had been officially forgiven and that her total balance is now 0 on her federal student loan account. This is a long process, guys. There's not a lot of paperwork, but there is a lot of follow-up. So you do have to stay on top of things. As you can see, we started this process on October 27th, 2021, and we didn't get final approval until August 29th, 2022. That's almost a whole year later. And that's why I couldn't get this video out to you guys sooner, because I need to ensure that I had all the facts. I needed to see all the issues that comes up while I was working with someone else that was going through this process. I, on the other hand, did all these exact same steps 10 years ago. So I needed to make sure that things were pretty much in alignment to what I did and what the process looks like currently. The next mistake that I haven't really heard anyone talking about is that you're focusing more on your occupation rather than the employer you work for. And the Department of Education isn't really looking to know what your occupation is. That's not even a question on the public service loan forgiveness form. To qualify for public service loan forgiveness, the type of job you have isn't as important as the employer you work for. So the best way to check to make sure that you are working for a qualified employer before you begin the process of applying for public service loan forgiveness is to use the employer search tool on the studentaid.gov website. This next mistake is something that I hear a lot, which is that they only submitted a public service loan forgiveness form one time. And therefore, they thought that that meant that their loans were now on the radar of public service loan forgiveness and that their loan servicer is keeping track of all that information for them. You will need to make sure that you keep track of this information yourself for the duration of the time it takes for you to qualify for public service. So if you're starting from year 1 doing public service loan forgiveness, you will need to make sure that you submit a public service loan form every single year until you have made 120 payments or until you've reached 10 years of service. The average employee only stays in a role for less than 5 years. Can you imagine if I were trying to meet the October 31st deadline and I had 6 different employers within the last decade? That would mean that I would have to now track down all of those prior employers I worked for over the last 10 years, and then I would need to try and get them to sign off on my public service loan forgiveness employer certification form in a tight time frame. And then I would need to have to submit each one of those forms to my loan servicer in hopes that they wouldn't misplace them somehow. That would be a headache. What happens if you left one of those employers on bad terms? Now you gotta go back and get them to certify your employment, which is awkward. What if the people that you work for are no longer there or they retired? I mean, I'm sure in some circumstances, the Department of Education has provisions for this, like they might probably ask you to submit your tax forms to show proof of employment, but that all slows down the process of you getting qualified for public service loan forgiveness. So to ensure that you don't lose time, try to make sure that before you leave any employer, you have your public service loan forgiveness application signed. Now on to addressing some of the media coverage related to the one-time student loan forgiveness waiver, which leads me to the next mistake you may be making, which is that you think student loan forgiveness is going to be taxed at the end of the year, so you've ruled it out completely. In some situations, borrowers would be taxed if they lived in one of these 13 states that consider student loan forgiveness as taxable income. Indiana is the latest to confirm forgiveness that will trigger state income taxes, and some borrowers may owe county levies on top of the state income tax. So this is a valid concern. While the student loan debt forgiveness is tax-free at the federal level between the years of 2021 through 2025 due to the American Rescue Plan of 2021, it can be subject to taxation at the state level and counted as income for the borrower. But it is important to note that it appears to only apply to the one-time student loan forgiveness initiative and not to the other debt relief plan initiatives. A similar problem occurred with the Paycheck Protection Program, which provided forgivable loans to small businesses during the pandemic. The PPP loan forgiveness was not taxed at the federal level, but some states would have taxed it at the state level. But there were a number of states that resolved the tax penalty by passing legislation to conform state tax law to federal law for the limited time during the pandemic shutdown. So it is possible that some states will engage in similar efforts to shield their residents from state taxation. Here's a list of states that are already waiving taxes for student loan debt forgiveness. So please consider all of your options and consult with a qualified tax advisor to determine what your obligations will be this tax season. This mistake is one of the most common, which is that you didn't know you can request to ask them to review your payment calculations again if you were trying to qualify for public service loan forgiveness after the PSLF limited waiver expires. Even after the limited waiver is over, you can still request that the loan servicer send you what is called a history of qualifying payments letter. This was something that I requested back in 2018 when I realized some of my payments weren't being marked as qualifying payments towards public service loan forgiveness. Now, it will take a while for them to generate this type of letter because it's so detailed, but this is the type of research that they did for me back in 2018 that they are now doing for people who are applying for the limited waiver. So as you can see, back in 2018, these were all payments that they told me that they were not going to allow me to count towards public service loan forgiveness. This looks to be about 24 payments. That's 2 years of public service that they were not allowing me to get credit for. Now, back in 2018, this limited waiver obviously didn't exist then. So what I learned from this experience was when you submit your public service loan forgiveness application matters. All of my issues stemmed around the fact that there was too much room for ambiguity regarding my employment history. So there wasn't much of a case that I could make for myself when I felt like they were mishandling my payments or inaccurately counting them. So what I started to do was every time I started a new job someplace else, I would have my public service loan forgiveness application signed by my HR department on the anniversary of my start date. That way there would be no confusion about which dates qualified for my employment. For example, my very first day of employment with my current employer started January 2nd. This means that every year going forward, the day after January 2nd, I would have my public service loan forgiveness application signed by my HR department. So after I submitted my signed public service loan forgiveness application, I heard back 4 months later, because that is usually the length of time that it takes the U.S. Department of Education to certify your employment for public service loan forgiveness. So on April 11th, I received my public service eligibility letter. And as you can see, it tells me that I still have 21 payments left before I qualify for public service loan forgiveness in the year 2024. Then less than 2 weeks later, on April 22nd, I received another letter, this time telling me that my qualified payments have been updated due to the public service loan forgiveness limited waiver. And now all of those payments that I was denied back in 2018 are now counted under the public service loan forgiveness limited waiver. My count towards public service loan forgiveness was recalculated to reflect that I now only had 6 payments left. In other words, now I just needed to submit a public service loan forgiveness form certifying 6 months of employment. So remember that the letter that I received on April 11th from the Department of Education counted as 12 consecutive payments from the year January 2021 through January 2022. This last letter, dated April 22nd, is now asking me to certify my employment for the year 2022 through January 2023. So that means that I only needed to certify my employment from January to June. But that also meant that I needed to make sure that my public service loan forgiveness application was dated July 1st, 2022, so that the full 6 months could be counted. The dates matter. So on August 18th, I received another eligibility letter with the qualifying eligibility number now canceled out. Once this happens, they will then generate a second letter, which then also goes to the 3 credit bureaus to have them remove the balance of your student loan debt from your credit report. So in 1 year, I've gone from having $100,000 of student loan debt to now only having $19,000 in student loan debt remaining. I had one federal loan debt of $60,000 and 2 separate private loans with Navient totaling $40,000. In my last video, I shared with you that I successfully paid off $20,000 in private loans by using DoorDash as a side hustle. And if you're interested in finding out more about that strategy, I do have an income strategy guide and a PDF completely free for download if you're interested in that, and I'll leave it in the description box below. But in this video, I'm happy to share with you all the steps that it took to get $60,000 of my federal student loans forgiven through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So here are the important dates to remember.
The Biden administration has announced that eligible borrowers with federal student loan debt can now apply for relief through the beta version of the Student Loan Debt Relief application by visiting the studentaid.gov website. The application is available in both English and Spanish, works on both mobile devices and computers, and only takes a few minutes to fill out. It's estimated that already over 8 million federal student loan borrowers have submitted the form with no issues. The application will remain open until December 31st, 2023, so there is no need to hurry in completing it. Additionally, if you live in one of the 13 states that made tax student loan debt relief as income, this extension timeline offers you time to speak with a tax professional about this federal benefit.
October 31st, 2022, the limited waiver expires.
102 Democratic lawmakers have requested that the Biden administration extend the Public Service Student Loan Forgiveness limited waiver deadline from October 31st, 2022 to July 2023. As of now, it is unclear if the Biden administration plans to move forward with this proposal.
November 3rd, 2022, borrowers who attended this list of defrauded schools must apply for relief for the borrower's defense to repayment settlement by November 3rd to get at least some benefits from the settlement.
On November 14th, 2022, borrowers have until this date to opt out of the targeted student loan debt relief benefit.
November 15th is the suggested submission date to submit your application for the one-time student loan forgiveness waiver, because you'll want to give yourself enough time for the Department of Education to review your application so that your student loans can be forgiven before the student loan repayment moratorium ends December 31st. Then, after December 31st, borrowers who still have a balance after the limited waiver and then after the one-time student loan forgiveness has been applied to their accounts, they will need to resume payments after December 31st. On January 1st, payment count adjustments to the income-driven repayment plan program is expected to commence at or around this date. And then July 1st, a new income-driven repayment plan and new public service loan forgiveness regulations will be released. These new rules will cut in half the amount that borrowers will have to pay each month on their undergraduate student loans and protect the borrower's income from high monthly loan payments. And then there's mistake number 13, which is that you think consolidating your student loans to lower your interest rate or to have all your loans in one place is the best option for you, but you're not sure about all your options. If that's the case, then be sure to click on this video where I go into full detail on the pros and cons of student loan consolidation and why I ultimately chose not to. And as you can see, my decision paid off.